How's it going? This is Levi from Bayfoils. Today's video we're going to have a little bit of fun and we're going to do our own take on a tier list. I'm a big fan of fighting games and Street Fighter 6 just dropped, and I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube about ranking the characters, and so today we're going to talk about the Fliteboard of wings and kind of rank them like we would a tier list for a video game. If you haven't seen any of our videos, we do a lot of Efoil content. We're a flight school, so we teach people how to Efoil using Fliteboards. You know, we've been teaching 2 years now, and I've probably put 300 to 400 students on the water and taught them how to Efoil. I myself have Efoiled hundreds of hours. I've tried every combination of wing out there, so I'm pretty familiar with Fliteboard's whole lineup. For this video, we're just going to talk about which wings I think are like essential, which wings are fun to have in your collection, but not like for everyone. And then we'll put some wings that are not the best. Let's label our categories here. Let's call S essential. These are going to be the ones that everyone should have. And then A, great for almost everyone. Let's call B situational, if I can spell. C, conditional. And then D, not for everyone. I don't think we're going to be putting in many in D, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Let's spell that right. We'll just go down the line here, how the images are presented. This first wing we have here is their new Cruiser Jet 1500. The Cruiser Jet 1500 and 1800, you don't have to use them with the jet. They were designed to be used with it, but you could use it with the propeller as well. And it's actually really fun with the True Glide. In my opinion, this is the new essential wing. The Cruiser Jet 1500 is really like having your cake and eating it too. It's super stable, but it's more maneuverable than the standard Cruiser 1100, which is kind of the standard wing that they ship with. It provides lift at a lower speed, so you can get up on the foil much easier, but it's much more nimble. It's great if you're looking to get into wake surfing or wave surfing with the True Glide, because you're able to catch a smaller, less powerful wave, keep it up on the foil. Typically, I ride like a Cruiser or a Flow 1100 at like power level 3. This I can ride it on power level 1, no problem, and keep it up off the water. So whether you're a beginner or a pro, or you're looking to surf or doing flat water, this is literally great for everything. And I think everyone with the Efoil should have this wing, period. Same with the Cruiser Jet 1800. It's a little bit bigger, so it does provide more lift. I would say this isn't essential, but great for almost everyone. The only people who wouldn't really benefit from having an 1800 in their collection would be like people under 150 pounds. Just because 1800, it's big, that's a lot of lift. And so if you don't weigh enough to keep it down on the water, this wing could just keep launching you out of the water. So it's still just as maneuverable comparative to the Cruiser 1800, but it's more maneuverable, easy lift off. If you're over 200, probably go for the 1800 over the 1500 if you want to go a little bit slower, get a little bit better battery life. But still, it's a great wing for almost everyone. So the next wing here is the Cruiser 1100. This was their old standard wing that, like, if you just bought a board on their website, it would come with this wing. This I'm gonna put down to situational. This wing is really kind of taking a back burner now. My biggest gripe with this wing is the downturn tips makes it really hard to corner. It's more stable in choppy conditions. If you want a little bit more roll stability to just ride in a straight line, either upwind or with some current or something, this is still a great wing for that. Outside of that, if it's a flat day, this is gonna be more fun. If you're trying to surf, this is gonna get you better, slower speed. Same with the 1800 Cruiser. I'm actually gonna put this all the way down here just because the 1800 Cruiser is so big. Unless if you're like pushing the upper weight limit, like 250, this wing is just not really fun. I'm only like 175. I'm foiling on power level 1 and it's still trying to lift off. Turning it is really hard. Everything that this wing does, the Cruiser Jet 1800 will do better, especially for that heavier guy. So this is not really, if you don't have one or if you've never tried it, don't worry, you're not really missing out. Next wing, this is the Flyer 800. This was one of their third wing option. That was their like standard wing sets when Series 1 came out. This was my favorite wing for a long time, but I'm gonna put it under situational. Because of the Cruiser Jet, this kind of takes a back burner. The Flyer still is one of the best wings if you want to go fast, because it's only 800 square centimeters. It's very small. I've taken this wing, I've pushed it at power level 20. I think I've clocked like 44 kilometers per hour on this wing pretty easily. It's stable. Those downturn wing tips make it really comfortable at that high speed. But you know, high speed isn't for everyone. If you're not looking to go fast, it's not the best. When it was the only option for that higher speed, more performance-based wing, yeah, this was my essential. I only rode this wing for like a whole year. But now with other wings out there, I don't really use it too much anymore. Moving on, we have our Flow series wings. So I'm gonna kind of talk about these all together because you have the Flow 1300, 1100, and 900. And then we have our Flow S 13, 11, and 900. Let's talk about the Flow 1300. I think that's a great for almost everyone wing because it's the next logical step from your Cruiser. So say we started with the Cruiser 1100, the Flow 1100 or 1300, or even 900 depending on your weight and your experience. That's like the next step in terms of getting a more performance-based ride. The Flow series wings are anhedral, so they tip up. I might be confusing that. I always get it backwards, whether it's dihedral or anhedral. But anyways, the wing tips on the Flows point up, which means you can corner much easier and perform some really hard bank turns. There's no resistance when you're trying to engage the rails. This makes them a little bit harder for beginners, but the 1300S or 1300 standard Flow, I've sold to beginners as their first wing, and it's really easy. And it's honestly much more fun than a standard Cruiser 1100 because you get really low speed takeoff because it's 1300 square centimeters, but it still feels really nimble and it's just all around a fun wing. The big one has a longer wingspan, so this is one of the easiest wings to get the tips out on a turn. So if you want to breach the wing, get it out of the water and do a nice bank turn, the Flow 1300 is your best wing to practice that on. Same with the 1100. Those are both great for almost anyone. The 900 we're gonna put into situational. It's pretty small, and so like if you're a heavier rider, again, over 200, you're gonna get diminishing time on the water. If you're not really caring about your ride time, the 900 does carve much better and go faster. I would for sure say this is gonna be the best situational wing in my opinion. Moving on from the Flow series to the Flow S. Now it's kind of confusing because they have the same name, but they're different wing shapes. If you can see these wings, they're a little bit shorter wingspan, but the wing tips are a little bit chunkier, a little bit thicker. You know, you can go on forums and read what they say, but in my experience, the Flow S are more stable at a slower speed, whereas the Flow standard are more stable at a higher speed. And so when you're learning to ride, it's better to have a little bit more speed because it's more stable and you just get more lift in general. But if you're looking to do surfing, wake surf, regular surf, it's better to have more stability at that slower speed because oftentimes a wave or wake is going to have less energy than what you can just use the motor for. I put the Flow 1300 still got almost great for everyone just because it's all around a great wing. You know what I just noticed? I was using the stabilizer image for the Flyer. Let's put the right image up there. But the Flow 1300S, you know, it kind of depends. It's kind of that halfway, you know, between essential and almost great for everyone, because it kind of depends on your background and what you're going to be using it for. If you do have a boat, or you go where there's a lot of boats and you're doing wake surfing, 1300S is pretty essential. That is the quintessential wake surf wing. It carves harder than the Cruiser Jet, so you can get back into the wake really easy or onto the wave. It's big, so anyone can ride it, and it's more stable at those slower speeds than the standard Flow. For, you know, a beginner who's a little bit hesitant about going fast, you can get up on the foil and it feels okay at a much slower speed. I really dig the 1300S and the 1100S as well. Those are pretty essential, you know, just depending on your rate. Again, 1300 is a little bit better if you're like pushing the upper limit. 1100 is what I mostly use, 1100S. That's my favorite front wing Cruiser Jet, and 1100. I'm almost always on those, especially when I'm doing a lesson. S900 is gonna be situational because it's very small, it's very wild, it carves really hard. It's definitely not a beginner wing. I can put a beginner for their first lesson on any one of these. You'll probably wipe out more on the smaller wing than you would on the Cruiser Jet, but within an hour, you'll be able to figure it out. You can't say the same with the 900. I've done a session with someone who wanted to try it. They spent the whole hour just falling every time just because it's too wild. And then the last front wing we're gonna talk about is our Race 700. This is very conditional. I would say almost not for anyone just because it's so small, but they're, you know, for me, I rarely use it because out here on the bay, we get a lot of chop, and when it gets windy with waves, the race wing is very hard to manage. It's 700 square centimeters, so it's their smallest front wing in their lineup, which means it's very fast. At power level 20, I probably hit 46 kilometers an hour. I'd have to look at my session data, but I was going really fast. Honestly, too fast, because I did wipe out when I was using it, and it really hurt. You going that fast, you skip on the water a little bit. I had to take it to power level 12 to start foiling, just to get enough lift. You're really cranking it. You cover a lot of ground and you drain a lot of battery. So this is a wing where you could find yourself in a position where you're swimming back because you're going in limp mode. I was racing, you know, more or less power level 15 to 20 the whole time, and on an Explorer battery, I drained it in about 45 minutes. So like, you know, sport battery, I couldn't even tell you, or a nano, not even worth it. But it's fast. It's very fast, and it turns at high speed. It turns better than the Flyer. It's easier to control at those high speeds, but high speeds aren't for everyone. It's dangerous, it hurts, and just not efficient. So if you have other wings in your lineup and you do want to try some fast speed riding, go for it. But otherwise, if you only want one or two wings, get a Cruiser Jet. If you just want one wing that corners and goes fast, you don't want to buy multiple wings, look at the Flow 1100 or 1300, because that's going to give you a higher top end speed like the Flyer, but still much more nimble and carves better at lower speed than the Flyer does. So at least that's just my hot takes on it. The stabilizers, you know, they don't have as big of an impact. It's more for leveling the board when you're riding. Hey everybody, this is Levi from the future. As I was editing the video, I realized I didn't talk about shims at all. If you know anything about Fliteboard, you know that there's shims in the back, 0 to 5. Higher the number, the more lift, but more drag. So I always use a 0 shim because it's the least amount of drag and it feels the best, especially turning and riding at a higher speed. I'm not gonna go too much into the effects of the shim because honestly, I feel that with proper technique, you really don't need to change the shims. It just adds another variable of complications, and especially the extra drag you get from that angle, not as good as the benefits. It's diminishing returns. But anyways, for the rest of the video, I'm using a zero shim, even though I don't mention it at all. So Yeah, anyways, back to the video. It also depends on your style. You know, if you ride really front foot heavy versus if you ride with your feet closer to the back, you need to adjust with more stabilizer lift. You can more or less use any stabilizer with any front wing, and it just changes how the tail works. 500 is not for everyone. Almost unusable. If you're 240, 250, pushing that upper limit, 1800 with the 500 stabilizer, that's going to get you on foil at a lower power level, like 3 or 4, so you can get a decent ride time, versus if you went with like a 1100 and a standard stabilizer, you're going to be getting off the water at 10, 11, and you're just not going to have as much of a ride time and put more stress on the battery and the motor. Drawing a lot of current isn't necessarily great for the battery. Cells can get hot and have a bad time. I believe this is our picture for our standard 290 stabilizer. I don't like the stabilizer. There's no real reason to use it anymore, especially with the other options that are out there. Turning is really stiff with this wing, especially if you're using one of the more nimble roll wings. You'll have that roll in the front, but then in the back there's a lot of rigidity, so it just doesn't feel great. I don't like this wing. After your first session, you're going to want to try turning more, and you're going to quickly move past it with their Cruiser 300. So that's their new stabilizer that came out with the Cruiser Jet series. This is my favorite stabilizer right now. It's more or less flat, but it's big, so it has a lot of surface area, so you get good lift from the back. Keeps the board, especially if you have a smaller wing in the front, it keeps the board nice and level. You're not riding nose up as much as with the smaller stabilizers, but it still feels very loose. Well, not very loose, but it's looser than the 290 in the back. So paired with any one of these wings is great. Paired with any one of these wings is great. Basically, there's not a bad combination with this stabilizer. It's not the most radical, but it's just works great. The next stabilizer is the Flow 245. This is also essential. If you had either one of these stabilizers, you're gonna be set up and have a good time for any kind of riding. It just kind of boils down to how much lift you want in the back. You know, a lighter rider, or if you want a looser feel, more like a surfboard or a wakeboard, the Flow 245 is the go-to. Like if I only wanted one wing setup for a more aggressive ride, Flow 245, Flyer 800. The other setup that I use for teaching, where I want it more slow speed friendly and a little bit more stable, 1100 or Cruiser Jet with the Cruiser stabilizer. That's like hands down the best setup for how I ride with it. Very efficient on the battery, but it still feels very lively, very fun. And yeah, if you only wanted one setup that you could ride, have a good time with, but also teach somebody who's like very new to the sport, Cruiser Jet with 1500 with the Cruiser Jet stabilizer, boom, you're done. You don't need anything else. That'll handle 90% of the conditions you're going to want to ride in, and it feels great for everyone. Last stabilizer is the Race. Again, we're going to put that in conditional. It's very small. It's 200 square centimeters, so it's the smallest stabilizer. Paired to be ridden with the Race front wing, it's very fast. That was the setup I was using when I hit like 40, 45, 46 kilometers an hour. It works great with this. I know people who do use this stabilizer with other front wings to make a very loose setup. It makes it feel very nimble in the back for using that back foot for turning, but you don't have a lot of lift. So if you're using a bigger wing like the Cruiser Jet or the Flow 1300, it rides very nose up, and it's kind of not the most fun. End up putting a lot of front foot pressure, like too much front foot pressure, and like your foot will start going numb, so it's not super comfortable. If you do pair it with like the Flyer 800 or the Flow 900S, and the less lift evens it out, and it feels good. It's a cool ride, but not my particular cup of tea. I prefer a little bit bigger stabilizer to keep that board nice and level, less nose up riding. But that's basically it. This is my tier rank for all of the Fliteboard wings. Again, this is just my opinion as somebody who's ridden a lot. You know, the great thing about Fliteboard is any front wing can be used with any stabilizer, so you can try any combination and see how it rides for you. Obviously, these are totally opinion based. If you think I got it right, let me know in the comments. If there's a combination I didn't mention, or if you think I'm just off my rocker and I don't know what I'm talking about, comment as well. Like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and yeah, hope to see you guys out on the water.